Let me have your attention for a moment.
Stay calm.
What is it?
What is it?
A life form of its own.
Head straight for him!
Be afraid.
The voice on the radio.
More than just a man.
This is something much
Everything will be all right.
more dangerous. Dangerous.
Stand by to transmit.
Receiving you. Over.
Now hear this.
Buckle your seatbelt.
We'll be fine. Good morning, everybody. 7 minutes after the hour. Welcome to the Sunrise Show. Craig Froenig in, and so glad to be here, tuned in. I'm glad you're tuned in. 59 degrees out. It's National Donut Day. We gave a box away to Mitch. Thanks for calling in and doing that. And then I've got a pair of tickets for the Southern Oregon Speedway, if you're so inclined. And then coming up in the next break, thrilled to have in from Southern Oregon Public Television, Brad Fay. He's the Director of Content and Services, and Daniel Pinkham, a Vietnam veteran. And they're going to be talking about it's My Story of Service. And it's a wonderful produced special starting on Monday at 9 p.m. on KSYS. And they've got 8 episodes going on. And I tell you what, I was just talking to Daniel. He's here. He's in the studio. Linda's here as well, and Brad. And the interesting thing about Vietnam veterans and veterans of all wars is they forget that we, the people, need to hear their story. And I know that the atrocities of war, that war is hell. And if you go back to World War II veterans, all they wanted to do is they fought for their country, they defended their country, they came back, they celebrated, but then they put it away. And all they wanted to do is get back to business. They wanted to get back to normalcy. They wanted to get back to what life was like. They wanted to be Americans. They wanted to raise their families and do their job. But what has happened is the politicians have forgotten that war is hell. And when you can't negotiate, when you don't work the deal out, you have to send men and machine out in front. And that causes loss of life. And I'll tell you, I wonder if I've got this here, related to facts and figures. This is put out by the Southern Oregon Veterans Benefit, SOVB.org, and facts about the Vietnam Memorial Wall. 58,267 names are now listed, and the first casualty from 1956. But here are some of the figures that will give you goosebumps. 39,996 that died in the Vietnam conflict were 20 years or younger. 39,996. 8,283 were just 19 years old. And the largest group of fatalities in the Vietnam War, 33,103 were 18 years old. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got all the high school graduations going on right now. Can you only imagine if they had been drafted prior to that, their 18th birthday, and then sent to Vietnam and, of course, died defending their country? We should be so grateful to these men and women that have defended our country all these years. And we're going to be talking with Brad Fay from SOP TV and Daniel Pinkham, a Vietnam veteran, coming up after this break.
Shout, 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 I'm talking to you, so come on. Shout!
Good morning, everybody. 18 minutes after that. Welcome to the Sunrise Show, and extreme pleasure to have a veteran in the studio with me this morning, Daniel Pinkham, and he's come on the project with Southern Oregon Public Television in their My Story of Service, being featured on Monday nights on KSYS at 9 p.m. starting on Monday. And I want to bring in as well Brad Fay, the Director of Content and Services. Brad, good morning.
Good morning, Craig.
Great to have you in. And Daniel, sir.
Good morning, Craig.
Thank you so much. Pinkham was a Vietnam veteran from 64 to 68, correct? U.S. Army?
Yes.
And, is alive and well to tell about it and feature on this My Story of Service. I guess, Brad, I want to start with you. How did this start? How did this whole thing become this big project? About a year in the making, but how did you talk about that?
That's correct, Craig. It was really two things that aligned that we came up with the project. The first thing is you may remember that we did actually some stories of service back about 5-6 years ago when Ken Burns aired his documentary on World War II. And we interviewed about a dozen veterans from that war, World War II. Attention that most of those veterans that we interviewed 6 years ago are now gone. And so we realized that, we're going to lose an opportunity here with the rest of the veterans in the area from that war. So that was the first thing that sort of set the stage. But the major thing that set the stage was the fact that PBS, Public Broadcasting System, has made a 3-year commitment to air stories of service nationally. And these are programs that are produced by public television producers, produced by individual stations around the country that basically tell the stories not only of World War II, but tell the stories of all the major wars that we have living veterans with, and even the past wars that die. And so we've already aired many of those shows. We will continue to air those shows for the next 3 years, and this will all culminate with a major documentary in 2017. That's how far out we're looking with this. In 2017 on the Vietnam War. And it's going to go 7 nights, and it's produced again by Ken Burns. And so we realized with that platform, if you will, that we had to do something locally, especially given what we experienced with the previous World War II vets.
Right.
And so we put together this project called My Story of Service. And we interview many veterans, and several of them have found their way to these programs. Some of the shows have 2 veterans. Some of them are 1 veteran telling his story. And many of them actually all of them very compelling.
Yeah, very captivating.
And
absolutely.
the first time in many cases when these people have opened up about this. And so that's how it came about. And as you said, we're going to be airing this Monday nights at 9 o'clock. It's going to go for 8 weeks. We're going to repeat it then for another 8 weeks.
Oh, great.
And we're already talking about producing another 8 or 13 to follow that. So this is a major commitment for us.
It's really great. We've got Brad Fay in with us. He's the Southern Oregon Public Television Director of Content and Services, and Daniel Pinkham. He's a Vietnam veteran. He's with U.S. Army. And Daniel, I want to talk to you. When you obviously, how old were you when you went in?
I was 17.
17 in 1964.
I dropped out of high school.
To go for, and now the draft, you had to sign up. Was it 6 months before your 18th birthday? Is that how that worked, or was it different back then?
No, it was different. It was after your 18th birthday.
Okay, so you dropped.
I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I joined.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, so you didn't wait for the draft. You dropped out of high school, joined the U.S. Army.
Well, that...
To a certain extent.
JFK had just died.
Right.
He had said, ask what you can do for your country. And so, anyway, when he died, it was traumatic on me.
Yeah, you were in high school when that happened.
I was in geometry that morning.
Yeah, that's... my family was affected severely by that. They watched, they loved him, and of course the country, and it was a sad, sad time. And you saw that conflict coming up with President Johnson and the advisement going on in Vietnam, and it was escalating. There was no way out. Daniel, you've now told your story. You're featured on the My Story of Service, and Daniel, I guess looking back, do you think you would have wanted to tell your story sooner? Were there people that were listening, or was it just too difficult? Because you mentioned with the families, as veterans, you wanted to protect your families from these atrocities, these ugly stories that are about killing.
I think coming back from that, you called it hell.
Yeah, war is hell.
I think that coming back to the United States, touching America's soil again, and the whole idea that I'm alive,
Absolutely.
basically, you just kind of like wanted to push everything out. And the last thing you wanted to do was talk about it with your family. You
Yeah.
might talk about it with an old friend
Right.
from high school or something, but you wanted to shield your family from that. And there was enough in the news at the time anyway, which we had been
Right,
sheltered
right.
from. We were sheltered from the news in Vietnam.
And then you come back, and the U.S., I mean, America is just in chaos. The whole peace movement, the anti-war movement. I mean, I've talked to Vietnam veterans when they came back, and they had no other clothes to really wear until they could get to civilian. You know, they had their uniform. They were spit on, yelled at, things were thrown at them, right?
Fortunately, I didn't experience that.
Okay, you were able to...
I wore my uniform in Santa Rosa. I grew up in Santa Rosa, and I wore it a couple of times when I got back. I definitely went out to dinner with my parents with my uniform, very proud. And I was unaffected. I mean, I didn't understand why people had the right as American citizens to tell somebody else what they could or could not do. They didn't define me.
Yeah, exactly right. No, you're absolutely right. And so then just a matter of not being affected. And I love that, Daniel, because that's the American spirit of, you know, you're going to do your job for your country, and then you're going to come back and you're going to do your job for your family and your community and be a great community, citizen of where you lived. Well, we have a break coming up, but let's come back. I've got Brad Fay in with us, the Southern Oregon Public Television Director of Content and Services, and Daniel Pinkham, a Vietnam veteran, and we're featuring the My Story of Service. It's going to be starting Monday, the 8th at 9 p.m. for 8 weeks, and they're going to repeat it, but local veterans are featured, and we're going to talk about all the different veterans that were featured in this feature film coming up on Monday after the break. More on the Sunrise Show, and we return on News Radio 880 KCMX. Brad, it's great to have you in, and Daniel as well. And we're going to continue after this. If you got questions, the phone number 541-772-8255. And I always celebrate great Americans, and I want to motivate and inspire Americans that have served, military service. Thank you for your service, and we are so appreciative of what you do and how you did it and how you hold your head up high. And we're thrilled. We'll be back. More on the Sunrise Show after this break. Good morning, everybody. 35 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to the Sunrise Show. Craig Fronikin, and continuing with Brad Fay. He's the Director of Content and Services for the Southern Oregon Public Television, and also thrilled to have in Daniel Pinkham. He's a Vietnam veteran from 64 to 68 for U.S. Army, and featuring in the My Stories of Service, and that 8-week episode, those 8 episodes featured 8 weeks on each Monday at 9 p.m. And Brad, we were talking about that, and Daniel, over the break, with veterans telling their story, and on My Story of Service, you can get to their website, soptv.org, and I encourage everyone to do that, because right at the top is, under the bar there, is veterans, and when you click on the veterans, it'll go take you right to, and you can watch a snippet of My Story of Service on the website, soptv.org, starting on Monday. And Brad, it's great to have these showcased, these Americans. I think they forget that they are great Americans. They've done their duty and to God and country. And I talk a lot about the oath of enlistment. And many times I simply can't get past the oath of enlistment to protect and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And these men and women that once they take this oath of enlistment, it's with them for their entire lives.
Well, that's absolutely right. In fact, you'll notice at the beginning of the show, we open with the oath, which sort of sets the tone for the show.
It's fantastic.
It is a fantastic oath, and it's something that gives you a real context of what you're about to hear when you listen to these vets tell their stories. And it's a remarkable endeavor whenever you enlist or you get drafted and you are in and you're deployed for so many years. And we're so glad to be able to tell these stories as these people come back. And some of them, as you'll see as the episodes unfold Monday after Monday, very different experiences, very different. And of course, we're covering all the wars, so very different wars generate very different experiences. So you're going to hear about things like some of the veterans have experienced PTSD. You're going to hear a couple of them mention that they were homeless for a while. You're going to hear some heroic stories. You're going to hear stories about vets that saved people. You're going to hear stories from vets who were saved. And you're going to hear about what they've been going through since their respective wars. And of course, the World War II vets really never opened up. Vietnam, not so much either. They may have, like Daniel said earlier, may have told a friend or two. But, you know, the World War II vets, they never opened up to their family. And when they got around to telling their stories, maybe even on their deathbed, you know, the families were just amazed at what they went through.
And they'd been stuffing all their lives. And,
Yes.
and Daniel, I want to bring you back in because you talked about after your interview, you were kind of the first one to step up and do this interview with Southern Oregon Public Television. That day, but then the next day, the following 2 or 3 days after, this flood of memories were coming back, and it was very difficult for you.
Yes, Greg, and it kind of shocked me. I realized how much I had actually suppressed some of my feelings. But in the end, once I got past those 3 days, it felt great again to go out in my garden.
Yeah.
And tend my vegetables and do whatever I do. And I was able to put it right back where it belonged.
You know, I encourage all veterans to tell their story because I feel it's healthy for them to vent and to get this off of their chest, so to speak, and let other people either carry the burden with them or to understand or to carry that story on. And whether it's recorded or not, obviously it's wonderful to have it recorded, and Southern Oregon Public Television has been doing a great job with that. I want to do a shout out to just some of the residents: Rick Hazen from U.S. Army, John Roeder from U.S. Army, Desert Storm, Frank Hernandez, he's been in the studio, Ed Hawkeye Hawkins, Carl Miller from U.S. Navy World War II, and Frank McMillan, U.S. Navy, Paul Robino, U.S. Navy, and Jeff Tabler from U.S. Army, all of those veterans. In fact, Bill Rich of Ashland and Herm Yates also, and then from Klamath Falls, Paul Hansen, U.S. Air Force, Steve Harper, U.S. Air Force, and Steve Buckaloo from U.S. Marine Corps. Just a drop of the bucket on these veterans that have stepped up. So, wow. Brad, anything last you want to say before we go?
None other than to tune in. We really hope that the audience gives this show a chance and takes a look at it and really tells their friends about it. And we really encourage our veterans to tune in. There's also a screening that's going to be held at the VA. You can find out more about that on our website.
Great.
And we encourage people to maybe show up for that. We're going to be screening 3 of the shows there. This will be after the series starts.
Okay,
but
gotcha.
It's a public screening, and it's another way for people to see it. And then, of course, we will have them streaming on our website. So.
Right, so after that finishes that first 8 weeks, then you'll go ahead and stream everything.
Actually, they're going to stream immediately after each broadcast.
Oh, my goodness. Okay,
Yeah, so-
Good deal. Well, that's great. And Daniel, thank you again for coming in. And, you know, it does take guts, and I appreciate, you stepping up and doing that and passing on this heritage of great Americans.
Especially to our youth. But thank you, Craig.
Well, you're very welcome. I'm happy to do it. And I'm just humbled to be in the presence of great Americans, and I pass that on to all the men and women that have fought in our military. Whether you agree or disagree with the political, when they pull the trigger, when they say go, the men and women go, and they uphold that oath of enlistment, and more so than I can say for others in our country. And if you ever think you're, if you love your freedom, think of that. So, and if you love if you love English, thank an English teacher. I think that's the next piece of that. So,
Right.
Anyway, all right, we got to get going. We'll be back more in the Sunrise Show after this break. Brad, thanks for coming in this morning. And,
Thanks for having us,
And
Craig.
Daniel as well, sir.
Thank you.
You
Thank
bet.
you very much.
All right. More in the Sunrise Show after this. My Enough is Enough segment is coming up. You won't want to miss that. Enough is enough. We'll do something about it. And then we'll be signing off for the weekend. And boy, getting ready for Alex Jones at 9, Glenn Beck at noon, Mark Levin at 3, and Dave Ramsey at 6. This is Craig Froelich on the Sunrise Show. We'll be right back. You can find us on the web as well, kcmxam.com. Our links are there, our Facebook page, Twitter, and our YouTube page as well. Okay, right back. Stay tuned.
My Story of Service, a new local series from